Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the Leadership Livestream brought to you by Women's Council of Realtors of Tampa. My name is Nick Sakis with the Amplified Marketing Group. I'm one of the co hosts of our very special program here. We have an excellent guest for you guys today, Christine Citrano. So I hope you guys have some questions for her. And that being said, as you know, we do stream this live on Facebook. So I moderate all the comments as we go. If you have any comments for Christine, or your WCR 2020 President Catherine, feel free to put that in the chat, and we will answer them as we go. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce your hostess with the mostest, your WCR Tampa 2020 President, Mrs. Catherine Sakis. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you to Amplified Marketing for all you do for Women's Council in Tampa. Amplified Marketing is one of our diamond sponsors. And as we know, Nick is our tech guy. So thanks so much. Welcome to this very special edition of Leadership Live. We always like to start out with our mission statement for Women's Council of Realtors. And our mission statement is, we are a network of successful realtors advancing women as business leaders in the industry and communities we serve. We also like to remind you that you don't have to take on the world to be a leader, that you're all leaders in your own lives, your homes, your businesses, your communities, and the skills of leadership will always serve you well in all those areas. So, without any further delay, we're going to be bringing on our special guest. As you know, we started this show during the COVID lockdown as an attempt to keep educating our members about leadership, and we featured our strategic partners and their leadership strategies throughout COVID. As after all, small business is small business. So that being said, we have a very special guest today, our own Florida State President, Christine Citrano. And we're so pleased to have Christine with us to discuss her leadership triumphs and challenges during this time. By way of a little background, I know most of you know Christine, but a little more background than you may already know. She's originally from the San Francisco Bay Area and has lived throughout the state of California. She also spent several years in the Philadelphia mainline area. She and her husband, along with their two children, moved to Naples in 2003, and she began her career in 2004, just in plenty of time for the Great Recession. So that was good. Christine has been a member of Women's Council since 2007 and has held positions of local network president to Naples on the Gulf, district vice president, governor, state secretary, state treasurer, president-elect, and currently holds the 2020 state president position. She's participated on several national committees and is a member of the National Executive Committee for 2017. In addition, Christine volunteers her time at her local Realtor Board, chairing Professional Development Committee and RPAC. She will serve as a board of director in 2021. She's a graduate of the 2010 Leadership Academy for the Naples Area Board of Realtors and is a member of the 2019 Association of Realtors Leadership Academy. She's a realtor with John R. Woods and has a successful business with her partner helping residential sellers and buyers. And in addition, she serves as a volunteer in her community. She's a board member to Well Fit Girls, Naples Shelter for Abused Women and Children, Collier County Boys and Girls Club, and the Salvation Army, along with being a Collier County election poll volunteer. Christine believes supporting our community and each other is paramount to a well-lived and joyful life. So without any further ado, let's bring on our Florida State President, Christine Citrano.
Well, thank you very much.
Zoom claps for you.
That's a pretty long bio. I didn't think you'd read the whole thing.
Well, the issue was, where do you cut it off? Like, there were so many things, but they were important things too, particularly
Yes.
since we are focusing on leadership. And I guess that's a side effect of being well accomplished. you know?
Yes.
So
One seems to lead to the next.
that's right. That's right. So we're so happy to have you today. And we're going to talk about COVID and this year and trials and tribulations. But before we get into COVID, what inspired you to get into leadership?
I think I've been asked this question a lot, and over the years I've thought about it. After I've answered the question, I've then thought about the answer and thought, is that really the reason? Is that really the reason? And I think I look back at my childhood. Now, I was one of three, and I was a middle child, which means
Me
that
too.
basically, yay! So middle children, in my opinion, and you probably share this opinion, we tend to get lost between the firstborn and the baby. And so I think at being the case for me, it was good and it was bad. It was good because the eye wasn't always on me, so I could do what I wanted to do without too much um, supervision. And it was bad because sometimes it felt like nobody was really paying attention to me. And I think that because of that, I really do believe that is what led me to become more of a leader. As a child, I was the one that had the great ideas, hey, let's go do this, or just leading the charge on everything. And that's just been my personality. And it just sort of has it's an innate part of me, obviously, and it's just fostered my career. It's fostered all of the decisions that I've made. And certainly with regard to the council, the decisions that I've made with my career with the council.
That's funny you say that. I've never thought about that being a middle child, but it's very true. And then also another outcome, you end up being a very good negotiator because you're always trying to, you know, keep the spoiled
Keep the
older and the
peace.
spoiled younger, like this whole machine working.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I've always been of, in the back of my head, there's just, why can't we all just get along? If you give a little bit and you give a little bit, it's going to be merriment for every of it. And so, yes, negotiating is also we're going to make a whole list, Catherine, of all the positives of being a middle child, because we certainly get
really,
slammed a lot.
I know, I know. So clearly, I read them off. You pretty much did anything and everything on your way up the line. Um, do you think all those positions helped? Are they necessary? Can you go from zero to president? I mean, what's your feeling on that?
Um, I don't think that you can go from zero to president of a local network nor of the state. There are too many steps along the way that are important in your overall understanding of the operations of a local network and the operations of a state. I think each one of the roles that I have had, whether the responsibilities were and the opportunities were fantastic or were challenging, each and every one of them has really lent itself to making me a better leader and preparing me better for going forward. So I personally feel every role is an important role to take. And I remember when I went from being the president of my own local network, Naples on the Gulf, and the next year I was district vice president. That was a real change because being in your own network, that's what you know. And everything that happens in the network it's just like a little family unit. At least that's how it came across for me. And then all of a sudden to take my career in women's council and have to look beyond Naples and look at all of these other networks that now were looking to me for assistance. I had the opportunity to see how other networks work and really take I was no longer, yes, I was always and still am a member of the Naples on the Gulf network, but it's just a bigger picture that you see. It's not that small. So for me, that widening of the experience for Women's Council was a huge shift in how I looked at what Women's Council is really all about. And it does start on the ground level with your local network, but depending on what your goals and ambitions are, you can take it anywhere. You really, I mean, that is the virtue of Women's Council, I think. You can take it.
So, say like you went from being president of your local network to DVP. Did you realize when you were president that you wanted to work your way up, or you were just going to the next level to see? I mean, how delineated was the plan?
Initially, my thought process was always, this is what I'm going to do this next year. I'll think about what I have to do after that when the time comes. I was never of the mind when I joined Women's Council, certainly, nor when I was local president, or for that matter, even district vice president, that I was going to be the state president. I always just taking it 1 year at a time, 1 year at a time. So that was true when I worked my way up the line within Naples. And then when I went on to be working with the state as a district vice president and then as a governor. It wasn't until I decided to run for the position of secretary, which at the time was the entry point truly to being on the executive line. I knew when I was making that decision that I wasn't just simply making the decision to be secretary, that I was making the decision to be president in 5 years. Um, Moving up the executive line. And so that was a very conscious thought on my thought process for me, something that I discussed with my husband, because what your volunteerism does affect your personal life. It can
Mhm.
affect your business positively and somewhat. It can have, depending on how you handle it, it can there can be a challenge to balancing your time. And so it was really important to me that I had his cooperation and support and understanding, which I did.
Mhm.
um, Sometimes begrudgingly, but I did have it. And but yes, when I decided to become secretary at that point in time, that's when I really was thinking long term, 5 years I will be president. Because I felt that when you are elected to be in that position, the entire membership is really looking to you to move up the line and not to move off the line.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. So we sort of discussed this middle child thing, but in general, do you feel like you had natural leadership abilities at all? Did you learn it all? Was it a combination? Were
Oh,
you in leadership
yeah.
roles outside of Women's Council?
It's absolutely a combination. I have always been, again, going back to being a child, I was always a, a risk taker. I was
Mm,
always the one who would be willing to try anything. And sometimes I got into trouble because of that. But I was the one who was like, let's get on our bike and drive and ride our bike as far away as we can. And I won't age myself, but those were the days when you could do that.
Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say you said bicycle, not electric scooter, so that's already.
so I've already established that. Okay. Yes. And I was, let's climb this tree and go as high as we can until we feel like the branches won't support us anymore. I was kind of a tomboy. Um, but I was always the one that, let's try it. Let's just do it. Just let's swing on the swing set as fast as we can and then jump off and fly down. I mean, I was very much a risk taker as a child could be. And I do think that that is a part of leadership, is being unafraid to take those risks and to try something new and different, and hope for the best. Hopefully, as a leader, you also have a plan for the outcome. But sometimes you just have to say, let's just do it. Let's just do it and see what happens. And I've said this before in speeches that I've given. I think that one of the greatest questions that one can ask oneself is, what's the worst that can happen? And truly ask that question of yourself and truly listen to the answer, whatever the answer is. And
mhm.
if you can live with that answer, and that is you've determined to be the worst thing that can happen if you do this, then do it. Because you've already said, this is the worst thing. I can live with that. So as far as I'm concerned, there are no obstacles. Go for it. But I do think that along the way, as we get older, as we mature, as we gain experience, we fine tune our leadership skills. Um, I think one of the biggest leadership uh, skills that one can have is diplomacy. And diplomacy is absolutely a learned skill.
Mm,
There are many fine
I
leaders who
agree.
are not good diplomats. They just, they get the job done, but they do it in a way that could be bullying, or high pressured. And diplomacy, again, being a middle child, I think for me, diplomacy is
I think so
huge.
too. I
Yeah.
think so too. Because at the
So
end of the day, you're dealing with volunteers. Not that you should ever bully or berate an employee, but
no,
volunteers, that's like herding cats.
it can
So,
sometimes be.
you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you have to be delicate about how you talk to people. I'm liking this middle child theory even more and more as we go. So now we have the background, and now it's 2020 March
Yes.
18. I have it on my calendar in Hillsborough County. Lockdown. I know what I was thinking that day and how I felt. What was in your head like, holy cow? What immediate reaction, mental, physical, emotional, next step?
I'm going to take it back a little further than March. I'm going to take it back to the end of January. As you remember, we had our midwinter meetings and installation at the end of
Mm,
January. And for all of those who've ever truly participated in those events, you tend to shut out the rest of the world when you're in that mode. It's all conference, it's all meeting, 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 networking 24/7. So I came home back to Naples from that time. And I remember distinctly sitting at the kitchen table with my husband and our son, who was still here visiting with us. And they said, "What do you think about that COVID thing?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" Hadn't even heard of it. I had
right.
no idea what they were talking. Oh, there's this huge pandemic going on in China. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea what you're talking about." That was the beginning. And then I started, of course, paying more attention, becoming a little bit more apprehensive about my travel schedule, because normally I would be traveling quite a bit as president. And having a little apprehension about that. And then I went to my last event that I traveled to for Women's Council was up in Pensacola for one of their big events in early March. And I was nervous about going. In fact, originally my intention had been to fly, because it's a big
So
drive
hard,
from
yeah.
Naples. So I was going to fly there, but for there, of course, I have a very relatively small airport, as does Pensacola. So I couldn't fly direct. No, 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 no. I had to fly all the way to Charlotte and then to Pensacola. And I just thought, that's crazy. I am not getting on an airplane during these times. And so I did choose to drive. That was the last event I went to. And then I came back to Naples and realized what was happening. And my thought process had been the same with regard to Women's Council as it had been towards my business. And that is, we have to pivot. And you've heard me say this before. Pivot has been my word this year. Um, Still have the same end goals, but just figure out a different way to get to them. In fact, I remember being on a phone call with you and the other local network presidents at the
Mm,
beginning of this. And the concern that you all had, which was rightful concern, was, what do we do now? We can't have any of these live events that we've been planning. I have my whole calendar full for the rest of the year and I can't do any of this stuff. What are we going to do? And I remember saying to you all, and really I was saying it to myself as well, and that is, just because COVID is here and just because you may be restricted in the face to face, person to person, skin to skin kind of contact, does not take away from the fact that we are still the leaders. You are still the presidents
mhm.
of your local network. I am still the president of the state network, and our members are looking to us for those leadership skills. We don't have a choice to sit back and have a pity party for ourselves. We have to just pivot what we were going to do and do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend you because you took that ball and ran with it. Like you've done so many touchdowns this year. It's been extraordinary. So kudos for
Well,
you.
thank you. And
Truly,
thank Nick
because
because
I
he's
know you were apprehensive. I do remember you're like, do
I'm
we
with
get
you.
to do our year over again?
Well,
Which, of
here's
course,
the
now look at
thing.
you, you are.
I went into the year so proud of myself because I had 12 months of programming, speakers, venue, lock and load. After all that hard work in the fall of 2019 from the leadership summit on, I thought I'm just going to have Easy Street this year because it's all done. And anyone I would talk to, other presidents, they you have a whole year? You have a whole year? And I'm like, yeah. And here comes COVID, and
Take the paperwork.
boom, now you're can't. I spent probably 2 days just canceling venues and speakers and seeing who would go on Zoom and who wouldn't and what could be done. And we had one 3 CE credit hour class to find out if that was even able to be accomplished on Zoom. So yeah, it was a lesson in, you think about being under organized, over organized. Like I had to undo a year and then go forward. So kind of
But
funny.
you
But in
did
the
it.
meantime, too, as you know, Zoom became our friend. And you had, it was in the beginning, it was monthly calls, and there were even calls in between that. I don't remember the exact schedule. But all of a sudden, that group of presidents got real tight and real informed real quick. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and that, it's interesting because I think that when we are faced with a crisis, and we could definitely call COVID a crisis, um, you really do see how people react. And there are all different kinds of reactions, and none of them are wrong. They're just different. And there are some people who become completely crippled with fear and
Mhm.
anxiety, and they just don't know what to do. And then you see other people who look at the situation and say, okay, this is what we've got in front of us.
Mhm.
And we know where we want to go. We know what our end goal is. So we were going to do it this way, but now we have to do it this way. And you do have an opportunity to see people really, my theme this year, again, unbeknownst to us, rise and shine. But I really do think that is what you, in a crisis situation like we have all faced ourselves with, you do have an opportunity to see people rise and shine. And many have, and I'm very proud of all of you who have.
Well, Christine, I see the little sign behind your desk, and you'd have that during the
Yes.
president's calls. But I do have to say, rise and shine is great, but you need to say rise and shine and pivot.
And
You need to put like a sign writer on the bottom, like a real
yes, I should.
and
Well, I
pivot,
have a little chalkboard that says joy. Maybe I'll erase that and put pivot
put
up
pivot.
there.
But I don't I really have to commend you for those president's calls and holding people together, because there were, even on the presidential level, people that were having a hard time coping, people that just were in such shock. Like you said, the middle child risk taker. I was like, okay, now change, run with it. It works or it doesn't. You know, Nothing's happening now anyway. What, like you said, what do you have to lose?
What do you have to
To,
lose? If it's a
to,
fail, okay, well, at least you tried something. Now try this.
but we got to get together and we learned from each other. And I'm not sure that would have happened without COVID.
No, I
You know
don't
what
think
I'm
it.
saying? So it got to be a close knit group, and there were a lot of good ideas bounced around and a lot of good energy going on, I thought.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've said this to other people, even though we never would have, chances are we never would have used Zoom or any other kind of virtual video conferencing software if times had been normal. But if there's a silver lining, and I always try to find the silver lining in everything, if there's a silver lining with regard to this COVID, is that it has introduced this whole video conferencing concept to all of us. And when we do get back to normal, and I know that we will, I believe many of us, and I know myself for sure, I'm not going to give this up because I do
Right.
think that this has such tremendous potential. not only through Women's Council, but even through business and relationships. And in my market, and I'm sure in your market as well, I deal with a lot of consumers who they're not here in Naples. They're somewhere else up north, another country, and they want to know what the market is. They can't afford to, or maybe they can, but time wise, they can't afford to continue to fly down here and look for properties. So this has opened up a whole new level of being able to communicate with one another. And I know some people find that video conferencing to be impersonal, which is interesting to me because I don't actually find it to be impersonal. I
Mm-mm.
like the idea that I can see people's faces and that they can see mine, and I do feel that connection. And I'm glad, with regard to the leadership calls that I've been doing monthly, that there are those of you who really do feel that connection. And I know not everyone gets on them, and it's not a mandatory thing. It's really there. I provided those there for your benefit so that you all felt as though there was a connection. And the idea that you're all collaborating with each other, sharing ideas, oh, this is what I'm working on and this is what I'm doing. That to me is what it's all about. We are a team and we grow together.
Right.
Nothing's a
I
secret that we
agree
hoard to
100%.
ourselves.
And if it weren't for COVID, we would have seen each other at the conventions meetings like 4 times a year. And here we're thrown together once a month. And I agree with you. I don't find it impersonal. When you're sitting in a meeting, say if it was a president's meeting in a meeting room, we'd all be in rows of chairs facing you,
Hmm.
right? Or you'd
Yeah,
be at a big round table and you're facing the person across from you. Now we can all see each other's faces, no matter who's talking, how someone's reacting. You can see if someone looks like they're having a bad day, you want to reach out to them later, that kind of thing. I think it's a lot more personal,
yeah,
you know.
I do.
And then look what came out of like the NAR conventions and the Florida August convention. You had thousands more people participate than ever.
Yeah.
And
I suspect I suspect even when we can get together in person, that there will still be an element of virtual conference available, which is great because it does give those people who would want to attend, but perhaps they can't attend. They don't have the time, they don't have the finances, whatever the circumstances. Being able to participate on a virtual level does give it opens up the window to so many more people.
so many more people, so many more educational opportunities, so much more professionalism in the business. And for Women's Council, how many uncovered future members or leaders that would never be exposed to the message?
Absolutely.
So, overall, I think very, very positive um, on that. So, all that being said, what are you proudest of during this time period that you accomplished?
Um, I'm I'm actually proud. I'm most proud at how calm um, I have been from the get-go of this COVID, and being able to, again, overused word probably at this point, but to pivot the direction that I was leading the Council of Florida with, and being able to help all of the networks, and from the executive team all the way down to the local networks, to help everybody kind of stay on track and not fall off the rails. I think that's the thing, honestly, that I feel the most proud of. I think that if I had been going, crazy and not knowing how to handle things, that would have happened. So, I think, we follow our leaders, and it's like children watching their parents, a toddler, somebody who's just learning how to walk, they're running through the grass, and they're running faster than they can, and they topple over. The first thing that they'll usually do is look back at mom and dad. Like,
Mhm.
am I okay? Like they're checking with mom and dad. Am I okay? And if the mom or dad runs over, oh my gosh, little baby Billy, how are, oh my God, the boy's gonna cry, right? Where if you're like, you're fine. Oh, go look at the butterfly. All of a sudden they're distracted from the fall and they're looking for that, butterfly. So I think that, being a leader, you have to be responsible for the people who are watching you. It's not just about you, it's about the people who are watching you, who are looking to you for leadership. And I feel as though I feel very proud of how I've handled that, quite frankly.
I agree. And if you're staying strong, the message is we're okay, the organization's strong, business as we start calling it unusual instead of usual. But
Yes.
keep on it. If you, I mean, you might want to sometimes pull the covers over your head, but you don't do it publicly because you're the face of the organization. And I think you've done a real good job on that. And then, as the word pivot again, last year when we were in Naples for the summit, for the leadership summit, you surprised everyone because for years and years and years, we had district luncheons. And for years and years and years, they were faltering in attendance. And you said to everybody, hey, no more district lunches. We're going to have like 3 mega conferences for, all day, very much like Wire. Split us all up in that room into 3 big groups. And it was like a cacophony of noise like you can't imagine because everybody was like, ah, like so excited.
Yeah.
So that's last October. We're tasked to do that. We're in 3 of these big groups. We're now, prior to Zoom, trying to have phone calls with 10 women on a line. Well, that's good. Try that. So we're trying to work through. So we get through all the stuff of like venues, speakers, whatever. Up, COVID, can't do it.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, okay, what now? What
Oh,
now? And so tell them the idea you came up with and how you saved that ship.
well, I'm not sure that I could necessarily take credit for that. I think it was really a collaborative effort with the district vice presidents who plan these conferences, and them talking with themselves and with the governors and with me. And so we just said, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to do it via Zoom, like we're doing everything else. And one of the things that I really love about what we did is, again, these district conferences are as they are described, district conferences, which is fantastic. So I'm down here in Southwest Florida. Our district conference would be from Marco Island north all the way up to Cape Coral. Every year it was the same networks that you saw. So you really didn't see any other networks outside of the state or national conferences. And the decision when we decided to do these conferences via Zoom was to mix up the networks. So you might have Tampa, and I don't remember who worked with what, with
Mhm.
who worked with whom, but you might have Tampa and Jacksonville and Broward
Right,
putting on a conference together, and that never would have happened before. And
right.
it just brings a different dynamic, and it gives all of you an opportunity to be networking with people all over the state that you might not otherwise have had the opportunity to do so. So I loved that we did it that way.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what Amy is doing next year. That is her decision. But again, it was a situation where my plan had been, we're not doing district conferences anymore. They've gotten to be too crazy expensive and too much work for the local networks to plan. Let's just do regional conferences. We'll do 3 or 4 because of the size of the north part of the state. But then again, COVID came, and so all of a sudden it was like, all right, we got to pivot. We got to do something
Right.
else. We're not abandoning the project. We're just changing the way it's being done.
Changing the
And
ways. Yeah. And I
and
think
and
that
I
worked very well. And
I do too.
again, we ended up, what was it, 7 different? Was it
I think
7
there were
total?
7 of them. Yes,
Because we were each in groups of 4
that sounds
presidents.
about right.
So
Yes.
it came to like 7. And that's the way it was split up. We were like someone East Coast, West Coast, South, North.
Mhm. Yeah.
Kind of that was the pattern, which I never would have worked with those people or maybe not even never met them. Who knows? Yeah.
exactly. And now you have a connection with them, which, that's Women's Council. That's what we do talk about,
Mhm.
is making connections with one another, sharing business ideas, sharing referrals. And that was just another way that we were able to change our plan, become more flexible, and still keep the mission intact.
Yeah. So, is there anything you would have done differently? We're all genius, hindsight 2020.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's a pun. I didn't even mean it as a pun. Hindsight 2020.
um, Gosh, would I have done anything differently? Maybe tried to jam as much travel in as possible between February and March. I mean, and one of the things I had really been looking forward to is the opportunity to go out to all of the local networks and really meet everybody, because I have traveled a lot over the last few years with Women's Council in the state of Florida, but I haven't been to every network. So I really had been looking forward to that, and that obviously did not happen. Um, so maybe if I could have jammed everything in at the beginning, that would have been something I would have done differently. But other than that, I don't know that I would have done anything differently. It just, it's all worked out the way that it was meant to work out. And I'm very proud of what we've done. This has been an unusual year, one that hopefully will never be repeated for anyone.
Mhm.
Um, and there are lessons learned for all of us, good lessons, bad lessons, but nonetheless lessons. And we take those forward and do better going forward. And so I'm not sure that I would have done anything differently, quite honestly.
Well, that's good to know because when I look back on things, whether it's business, personal, whatever, I like to think of it as what would I improve on, because I don't think regret is a productive emotion. I don't regret things. I think of what I might have done differently or improved
Yes.
on with that wisdom. So I think that's a great positive attitude to have. So, advice for upcoming 2021 leadership, be it state, local, what words of
Um,
wisdom do you have?
my words of wisdom for everyone, from the local level on up, is be kind with one another, um, be kind with yourself, be flexible about what you want done, what you think you're going to get done. This is a learning, it's all a learning experience. And if you are open to that, you will learn a lot about yourself that you will be able to apply going forward. You will learn a lot about the people that you surround yourselves with, and you need one another for that. There are no bad people. And another thing, this is something that a friend of mine has shared with me several times, because sometimes you have to hit me over the head before I finally get it. But that is that, if somebody is doing something or saying something and you find yourself getting all in a twit about it, don't take it personally. Look at the intention of what they're saying, because their intention is probably very good. Their delivery message may not be very good. So really try to look at the intention, and work as a team, because nothing in Women's Council especially happens individually. It all happens via team. So you
Right.
work as a team. Those are my words to everybody. And have fun, because it's fun. This is fun. We don't do things that we don't get paid for if they're not fun. So have fun with this.
That's great advice. Great advice. I had in your bio that you're going to be on your local association board next year. So you
Yes.
can tell for those that don't know what your other plans are for 2021.
Well, my local association has been asking me for years and years and years to be on the board, and I've always said no, I can't. I'm with Women's Council. I can't. And so I thought, okay, next year my responsibilities with Women's Council Florida especially will not be as great. So now I have the time So I am a freshman board of directors member for the Naples Area Board of Realtors. In fact, we leave tomorrow for our leadership summit or retreat. And beyond that, of course, I will still have some responsibilities within the state of Florida, but I am running for national liaison for Women's Council, and it will be. It's mind-boggling to think about this, but it's for the year 2022 because of the way the elections are done. So the elections will be in May of 2021 for the 2022 leadership team for national. And so I'm running for national liaison, which
Well,
I'm really excited about.
congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
sure you'll have the state of Florida support.
I hope
And for
so.
those that don't know, this is a fairly new, it is a new
It
position.
is.
State
2021 will be the
liaison
first year.
and national liaison. So, can you explain to those that aren't aware what the position actually is?
Absolutely. In years past, we had regional vice presidents, and
Mhm.
um, this regional vice president role was something that began years ago yeah, as a beta format, and it never really got off the ground, but it never really stopped happening either. And so National looked at this. In fact, when I was on the National Executive Committee back in 2017, we were looking at it then. And it was just like, what are we going to do with these regional vice presidents? Should we just cut the cord and be done with it, or can we revamp it in some way? And so as the years went on past 2017, they decided to revamp it. So rather than having, I believe there were 7 regions, like there could be 9, but I believe it was 7. I know we were in region 7. Um, they have taken the country and divided it into 3 different sections. So there's the West Coast, the
Mhm.
Central States, and the East Coast. So there will be now 3 national liaisons. These are elected positions, nationally elected positions. And what you can be, for example, I've lived in the state of Florida, but I could presumably be the national liaison for the West Coast or for the
Really?
Central. You do not need to be the national liaison in the area where you call home. Because the thinking is that this really isn't a traveling role. Now, might there be some traveling in it? Maybe, but a lot of what this role entails can be done via a phone call, via email, via virtual conferencing, video conferencing. And so the role really is that of acting as a communicator, a facilitator, an advisor to the state networks that are in your region, and liaisoning between the states and the National Executive Committee. And the position has and there is a role on the National Executive Committee for the national liaison, but really you are like the go-between. You're a layer for the national executive team and the state presidents, the state
So,
networks.
would you liken it maybe a little bit to what a DVP is now,
To some extent, yes, I think you could
but
make
just
that
on a
comparison.
bigger
On a
basis?
bigger scale, yes.
So, if there was an issue or somebody needed help, they're calling you first before national, and you're
Yes,
helping them out. So, when
yes,
you say there's three, so the election next year will be to vote for three people.
that's correct.
Okay. So, how many people are running? Any idea?
Um, there were 9, but 2 dropped out. So I guess there are 7 now. So the in November for our national conference, we have interviews. So everyone who's running for any national position, it goes through the interview process, with the exception of the president-elect, because of course they move forward. So the interviews will be conducted, and then the nominating committee, credential committee, will create a slate of recommended officers, including the national liaisons. And then from that point on, everyone, whether they were slated or not. For example, if I'm not slated, I still have the option of running
You can
from the
still
floor,
run.
which of course I will do. And then so then we have from November until May, in essence, to be campaigning for that role, and then the elections will take place in May.
But say if you win one of those three spots, then
Mhm.
does national assign you whether you're going to be east, west, or middle?
You know, that's a very good question, and it's one that I can't answer. I don't know. I can't. It hasn't been outlined to me, and I need to find the answer to this because that would be helpful in the interviewing process. If I am supposed to go in there saying I'm interviewing for the Eastern region or the Western region or the Central region, or if I'm just interviewing for the role and they then assign it. I'm really
Mhm.
not sure of that, but truthfully, I'm I would be happy with any of the three positions. Um,
As a middle child, you don't care. You're just ready,
as a
going
middle
forward.
child,
Whatever
as a
possible.
middle child, I'm totally whatever you want to give to me. You want to throw a scrap
Yeah.
my way, I'm
Just
good.
a
Thanks.
crumb, I'll take it. I'll
That's
take
right.
it.
I don't need the big piece.
But when you think about running for a state president is
Mhm.
big enough, how do you begin to campaign nationally? I know last election, like the week before national elections, just bombarded with text, with this, with that, robocalls,
Yeah.
you know. But so I understand that's sort of like at the end, but for the year coming up, how do you strategically do that? You try to go to the biggest networks in the states. What do you do?
Okay, so are you again on a national level you're speaking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
how do you campaign the entire United States
I
without a ginormous budget?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, we did have some people this last year who were running for the national liaison position who did travel across the country. They did go to major states and major conferences. That is a choice that one can make. There is, your budget is defined by your pocketbook. National doesn't have a budget for you. If your state happens to have a budgetary line item, you can count yourself as lucky. But basically, your campaigning is out of your own pocket. And so I think a lot of it can be done through social media, through making phone calls, it's kind of like getting a listing, right? I don't think it's actually all that different other than the fact that you might know these people. But sending out postcards, sending out emails, that kind of action, having phone calls. As the elections get closer, let's say by beginning of April. So you are 4 to 6 weeks out of the election. And I believe that timeline is when those robocalls started happening. And everybody who is running for a position was on it's mandatory that they participate on a phone call with the credentials chair and the CEO, to go over campaign rules. And they were very clear about in the rules about being very mindful of that kind of campaigning. And being very mindful of do not call numbers and do not text and and giving people the opportunity to opt out. um, very clear about that because I think that there were a lot of people who were like you, sort of like, not another phone call. I know you're running. Okay, I got it. You don't need to call me every morning. So I think that there are guidelines and there are campaign rules to help with that. And other than that, it's up to the individual. I am not a pushy person, so I won't be making random phone calls 3 o'clock in the morning to people across the country. But hey, if that's what people want to do, that's on them.
I tell you
um,
what, we'll make it a deal, make you a deal. If we're still running the show next year when the time comes, campaign time, we'll give you a spot so you can have a free campaign spot.
that's
Because
very sweet of you.
uh, our success has been mostly on the replays, and this gets posted to national, state, whatever. So we're having people contacting us and liking our Facebook page from all over the country.
Oh, I'll bet you are. Well, one of the things that I did do when we were doing Zoom calls for the state this year, and this national, the three, all of the I think there were 5 people running for 3 slots for the national liaison. I invited all of them onto a Zoom call. And because I really felt like I wanted to give our members the opportunity to hear from all of them, whether they were, now it just so happened none of them were from Florida, but truthfully, again, being the can't we all get along kind of middle child, I wanted to give everybody a fair shake and let everybody have an opportunity to speak. So if you would like to have me back, I would love to come back, but I would also encourage you to perhaps invite the others as well.
Maybe we'll have a panel. We'll have
There
a
you
Well,
panel.
go.
I
We'll
I
have
was
a
just going to
panel,
say, like, I'm a co-host for this show. I'd be happy to be a non-biased
a
co-host
non-biased.
You
of
can be.
interviewing the
We'll
candidates, and then you have content to put out there on your social media for you guys.
Yeah.
we'll do a panel. That's a good idea. Okay, we're running out of time. I'm going to ask you the same question we ask every guest at the end, and it's an unabashed attempt to get a testimonial for Women's Council, and we get it every time. We ask all of our guests, summing up why Women's Council and why now more than ever.
Women's Council has been one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I personally and professionally have grown by leaps and bounds because of this organization. I have taken on a professional, polished, um, sense of being that I'm not sure existed prior to this. I'm sure there were glimmers of it, but I have been able to refine that because of the experiences of Women's Council. And Women's Council has, in all of the opportunities that I have been afforded, it continues to allow me to look beyond what I might have thought I could do and try and reach even further. Why can't I do that? What's to stop me from doing that? And that is something that I think everyone benefits from by being a member of Women's Council. And why Women's Council now? In this day and age where we are finding ourselves flat out unable to, unwilling to, anxious about, having any kind of face-to-face interactions with people other than wearing a mask at the grocery store, perhaps, um, being part of Women's Council gives you, we have continued throughout this entire COVID experience to provide our members with benefits of interacting with like-minded individuals and being able to share whatever feelings we've had, whether it's joy or anxiety or anger or whatever it might be, to still have our toe in the water, to still have our foot in the game. And I'm not sure that there are too many other organizations that can actually say that. We have consistently, throughout this time period, been offering our members opportunities to be together virtually or otherwise. And I think community, if nothing else, COVID has shown me how truly important community is to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my husband. I love my dog. I love my family when they come and visit me with it, which is rare. But gosh darn it, I miss my family and friends who don't cross my door, that I don't see on a regular basis. And Women's Council has been able to foster that sense of community. So that's why now. And you make this relationship, every relationship you make it what you want it to be. But I think Women's Council, the more you give, the more you're going to get out of
I
it.
agree 100%. Extremely well said. And in this time period, like you said, it has kept the community together. The support has been there. And the interesting thing, and I would challenge any other group in the country, no matter what profession, to say that it happened at the national, the state, and the local level.
Yeah.
There was no falling down on the job. So um, uh, I think it's been an extraordinary year in that respect. I want to thank you over and over again. It's been a delightful interview. Want to thank all of our guests. I want to thank Nick with Amplified Marketing. Nick, you have any questions or anything in the chat?
Just lots of great comments about being part of the organization. I did see when you mentioned that being some people think Zoom is impersonal. One person mentioned the only time they think it's impersonal is when someone you're talking to someone and they don't have their camera on.
Yes.
Because like
And
you
there
would
are
never
some
go in person and
organizations that
record somebody
require
face
it.
to face, like in person with somebody and hide. But
Yeah.
people do that on Zoom because they don't have makeup on or whatever. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um,
It's probably more women than men that
yeah,
are
I think
hiding
I think
because
so. And
That's
then my
true.
favorite thing that you said through this whole meeting was ask yourself what's the worst thing that can happen. I'm a big proponent of making yourself uncomfortable to grow. So that
Mhm.
really resonated with me. I really like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to remind everyone this will be available on replay shortly. As always, anything you see in your Facebook feed from Women's Council of Tampa and otherwise, like and share, like and share. That's how we get the word around. We promised you a value proposition in the beginning of the year, and we hope that we have brought you uninterrupted value thus far. Also, feel free to reach out to me if you have an idea that you would like to see a show about. We'd love to hear from you. Our next Zoom event is October 26th at 1 o'clock in celebration of National Cybersecurity Month. We will have Craig Grant speak to us on cybersecurity. Our next Leadership Live is October 21, same time, same place. Guests to be announced. Remember, as always, we're here for you. Do not forget about our Mentor on Demand program. Go to WCRTampa.com and there is a list of people on the Mentor tab that are here to support you, to talk you through a difficult deal, a tough day on an individual basis. They're expecting your call. Don't be shy. Our national leadership is always available to you. WCR.org. They're a phone call away. And also, there is just a plethora of national webinars and events. And I also encourage you to visit our state page. So, to all our viewers, thank you for attending our program. Thank you for being members and supporters of Women's Council. Remember, together, we're better. So, just like and share, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye bye.
Bye.